Hey you! Did you like episode 2 of Catching Up? What other wacky adventures will Rob and Clay get into? Will there be an episode 3? Maybe. It all depends on support from fans like you who want to see more Catching Up. That's why we've decided to open up a Patreon, in order to get the funding we need to continue the series. Episode 2 was received extremely well, and we know exactly where we want to take Rob and Clay next. Maybe Roy sometimes, possibly Angie, possibly new characters altogether. Currently, we have an entire 6-episode season planned out, and are ready to jump right into production for episode 3. It's just gonna take some help from you! On our Patreon, you can get a variety of rewards through our many tiers, including behind-the-scenes artwork from episode 2 as well as all future episodes. The original episode 2 animatic, where it's just me doing all the voices.
Can you tell me what's going on now?
No time to explain!
You've been driving for 45 minutes, he's not even following anymore.
Oh, really?
We storyboarded the entire thing on paper, meaning we have a boatload of these little post-it note doodles of different scenes, character concepts, or just bullshit we sketched out while bored. And you can get some of these shipped to you through our Patreon. There's producer credit, executive producer credit, your voice in future episodes, your OC in future episodes. We've broken down the cost it will require to get an episode 3 made within a timely manner. And if the Patreon does super well, then we're going to be working on multiple episodes at the same time to ensure no more yearly release schedule. It all comes down to the support given to us from fans like you. If the Patreon flops, then we won't be making any more episodes while we look for funding elsewhere. So the fastest way to see episode 3 get made is to support the Patreon. I appreciate you guys for all the kind words with episode 2. It's only going to get better. And if you don't, then we're gonna start picking him off. Starting with this little shit right here. He's dead now, that's canon. Imagine if I did that to a character you actually cared about. Check out the Catching Up Patreon through the pinned comment or description, and thanks for taking a look. So Catching Up episode 2 finally released after a year production. Just in time for the holidays. Can't say the same for that Rankin video, but it's coming, I assure you. The response to the episode so far has blown both Veronica and I completely away. I couldn't imagine the overwhelming positive response. We both ensured the episode would come out to the high quality we wanted, but it's just very gratifying to see our hard work finally pay off. And that's because of those on Kickstarter who backed our project, trusting us to make a solid cartoon. Thank you guys. I'm waiting on everyone to give me their addresses so I can start shipping out the physical rewards. We currently have about 69%, haha. I'm gonna close the pledge manager in a couple days, so please ensure I have your current address before then. With the release of the first episode, I was pretty excited at the mostly positive reception as I wasn't fully confident in the final product. So the feeling this time around is like the total opposite, where I can actually be proud of what we made and we're so ready to make more. We were going to take a few months off to recoup, but we just can't stop talking about how we want episode 3 to go, so I really hope we get to make it. Patreon in the comments. Episode 1 took around 4 years to make. Episode 2 took 11 months. I think if the budget is there, we could get episode 3 done in around 6 to 7 months, eat at most. Despite the much faster turnaround, there was still a lot of area for improvement when it came to managing a production. I've already gone over a lot of these issues that were outside of our control in the video I released a few months back, but now that the episode is out, Veronica and I can now properly go into these issues without having to worry about spoilers. A big thing we learned with pre-production was having all your reference material, model sheets, hand model sheets, special posing, a base animatic, rough boards, all your concepts basically, ready to go as soon as animation starts. That may seem obvious, like no shit, but not having our proper equipment shipped to us as soon as we expected with our moving company definitely set us back on having that stuff ready to go. Even seemingly minor stuff would end up setting us back months, such as not having background concepts readily available for the artist, and Veronica having to now quickly go and sketch it out. And with this lack of prep, it unfortunately pushed us back in production, and caused us to go over budget on backgrounds. Again, we'd boarded everything on paper, and because of that, it's not like Storyboard Pro where you can just copy-paste your previous background over an entire scene. We ended up getting very ambitious with some of the shots because we had the freedom to on paper, only to realize we could have a scene where every shot required a different background. Originally, we had planned on going through each of these shots and deciding which backgrounds we should cut or merge to be used for multiple shots, but again, because of that delay with our equipment, leaving us no time to go through each scene and minimize the backgrounds used. Until that final scene of them back in Rob's garage. Veronica had done the revised boarding for that scene pretty close to the deadline, and so it forced us to actually consider what shots could be allocated to the pre-existing backgrounds made, because we had just exhausted our background budget. It's the kind of stuff we always figured we had to do, like managing specific background numbers and to what quality we wanted it, but things just got so rushed at a certain point that we said, oh, who cares, and it definitely bit us in the wallet where my ass is. We would not trade boarding it on paper at all, though. It was by far the most fun period of production. A majority of the time we spent figuring out the structure of the episode, both of us building off of a few improv lines between the characters that we find funny, and trying to naturally find a way to weave these exchanges in. The first episode had very little back and forth between Rob and Clay, especially in the middle part, so keeping them as close together as possible was definitely a goal of ours, giving them much more time to interact despite the shorter runtime. Boarding on paper really forced us not to go back on our decisions and just see where different ideas took us. It also forced us to limit ourselves when it came to what was worth being ambitious for. For example, we had many long panning shots in the opening board of Rob's garage, but we figured we could get the same point across in that opening shot by having it zoom out to show the full room, which could then be reused for multiple other backgrounds. We were trying really hard to get this thing as close to 11 minutes as possible, but it became apparent very quickly that was not happening. I would sit and take out as much unnecessary dialogue as possible and as much dead air as I could, and even then, it came out to still around 12 minutes long. Then, because I spoke way too fast in an attempt to try fit it in that time frame, the final animatic wound up coming to around 15 minutes, due to the voice actors delivering their lines much slower than I. This also meant we had to cut some scenes. I wanted a scene after Clay gets hit by the truck where we see him and Rob trying to have their movie night at his house, but his sisters consistently give him no peace. We wanted this sequence of Rob being overly flirtatious with Clay's older sister, and establish his younger sister to be this past. But in the end, the scene came out to like a minute long, so we shortened it to a quick cutaway. Hey, you can see the whole deleted scene though on Patreon. Wow. There was also a sequence where Rob and Clay arrive at the park where they run into a homeless guy, who has been friends with Rob for years and knows his family.
Toby, I find this in my brother's room. Oh man, Roy. What will your mom think when she gets back from Spias?
I liked it a lot, but again, if there were anything to cut for time, it would be this. Come watch it on Patreon then. Around this time, we showed this rough animatic to a lot of our friends. Most of the special thanks at the end of the episode are people who gave us this feedback. They all really liked it, which gave us some confidence towards the project, but there was definitely a lot wanting us to cut the homeless guy sequence, as well as a lot of split between the ending. See, we showed people two different variants of the ending, one where Rob and Clay smoke up, and one where they don't, and we got vastly different responses to each. Some people wanted Clay to smoke up, but others didn't. Veronica and I actually had a lot of back and forth ourselves on this, as I personally didn't want Clay to smoke, as I felt it undercut the message. Whereas Veronica felt it didn't, as Clay wasn't smoking to try and be cool, he was smoking because he wanted to. In the end, which did we go for? Find out up here. All this cutting, though, definitely made the final episode a little fast-paced, which I personally liked as it showed how stressed Rob and Clay were, constantly on the run and in a panic. But there could have been more moments of pausing spread throughout. I assure you, there was at some point, but on some random day we just decided it could afford to be cut. I always think about it like the pilot is an 11-minute concept stretched out to 20 minutes, while episode 2 is a 20-minute concept shortened to 15 minutes. I think our episode 3 plot so far has found a good balance between the two. Not too fast, not too slow. One thing we wanted to make clear from this episode was that the pilot happened, without question, but things were allowed to change it a little bit between episodes. We kept the continuity through, including minor things like the soda can Angie throws at Clay having the same logo as the one from the club, as well as her directly referencing the events of their first encounter, this being through Clay inadvertently repeating the same line he gave to her then.
I'm gonna go. I gotta go, like now.
But also, Clay is a teal now. Who cares? His colors are a little different. That's neat. How come they wear school uniforms here but not in the pilot? Shut up, don't talk about that. Again, minor visual differences, but they both still happened. Like Angie. Over time, I had grown to really not like her pilot design. It was just way too boxy, which made her super annoying to pose. Her name was also Jessica in the pilot, but that was literally the first name that came to mind, and she wasn't named audibly in the pilot, so whatever, her name is Angie now. Who cares? More people than I thought. Again, I was not confident in the pilot, so when we changed Angie and told everyone this, there were some fans upset about the change. And it was kind of weird because to me it was like, oh, I didn't think anyone cared about this. Definitely gave me a different perspective on changing things in the future. When I posted the initial redesign for Angie, people did not like it, which made us go back to the drawing board and come back with our current design, which I think is great. So I'm really happy to have gotten the feedback. Either way, I had the idea for episode 2 years ago, like 2020. Even from then, the episode was all about drugs. Basically, the original episode saw Rob have to let this girl come to his house or else her giant-ass brother would kick his teeth in. The girl has a crush on Rob, but Rob does not care about that stuff right now. And so he brings Clay over too to break the ice, setting up this weird not double date as the girl brings Angie along. A really stressed out Rob would then sneak into his brother's room and steal his drugs, thinking it will make the night more interesting and calm down. His brother literally did nothing in this episode, by the way. He would notice Rob stole his drugs, realize they were the drugs laced with other drugs, as he sits back and watches the mayhem from his window. At the time, that idea was a lot funnier to me than it is now. As soon as Veronica got on board with the project towards the latter half of episode 1, we started talking more about what we would do for number 2, in which the idea changed drastically from us talking about it. Veronica and I had been coming up with an idea for a graphic novel about a wannabe cool loser named Roy. And so when it came down to designing Rob's brother, I initially just wanted a lanky Rob, which would have been terrible. But Veronica combined the Roy character design with Rob's brother, and it was just kind of like, Rob, Roy, no duh. With that, Roy instantly got more involved in the plot. We couldn't stop laughing at the pedo park idea, so it went in too. And from there, it was just a case of structuring how the characters would get from location to location. I think Veronica and I work very well off each other. Sometimes when I write something, it'll make me laugh in the moment, but then I'll think, nah, that's too stupid, and go back on it. And so it was great to have Veronica with me who could say, well, it made you laugh, didn't it? And so it would stay. If it was just me writing this, Pedo Park would never have gotten in. Rob saying, blazing up that dank-ass kush wouldn't have either. The biggest thing I just really wanted to get in there was that joke of the baby walking in and stealing the weed. That was not a part of the episode for the longest time, and I just woke up one night like, I gotta add it, and just ran and storyboarded it really quickly. This was undoubtedly the most fun part of the experience because everything else was tedious management. Like I mentioned in the last catching up behind the scenes video, I had a very get it done whenever mentality towards the animators, until that last year of production at least. If you spent 3 months getting me a single shot, then whatever, it's not like I got a deadline to worry about. Now I have a deadline to worry about. We foolishly figured we could get all the animation done within a single month. Then that turned to 2, then that turned to 3, and then that turned to 4 and we got it done. Still not bad. We had kind of planned our schedule around the assumption that everything would go swimmingly. So when we wouldn't get stuff back on time, or freelance animators had to take care of other jobs, or someone just didn't get around to it, we would be set back. We also, foolishly, thought we could get this episode out in September for the 1-year anniversary of the pilot. So we were really just stressing ourselves out for no real reason, because the Kickstarter gave us a deadline of January. Every animator we worked with did a fantastic job, and I hope I get to work with them again in the future. At this point in production, around end of July, we really needed to get a start on animation, but unfortunately, our rig artists were taking longer than expected. This was our fault for not anticipating how long the rigs would take to make, as well as waiting for our equipment that was meant to have arrived by this point. And so by the time animation was ready to be started, all we had was Clay ready. But the issue came when Clay needed a variant with his cast on, and any shot where he didn't have a cast, he needed a school uniform. And so throughout a good month of production, we were restricted to only working on shots where Clay was seen from the torso up. And that's not to mention that Clay's cast gets graffitied on. At first with the Dick Rocket, and then much later with Angie's signature. Clay's cast variant was designed to have both of these on the entire time, and so sometimes an animator would just forget to remove one or both. And this started getting harder and harder to keep track of, because I've looked at this design a million times, and the last thing on my mind was the graffiti continuity. Sometimes I'd have to pull up the Toon Boom and re-render entire sequences really quickly just because I later realized the graffiti was wrong. Funnily enough, right as we were doing our final watch through of the cartoon, I noticed one single shot where Clay had the dick on his cast before Roy drew it. This was also one of the earliest shots I composited, and so along production at some point, I saved a new shot over this one in After Effects. And so I had to scramble to get a version of Clay without this on his cast within like an hour. I ended up only being able to render Clay as a separate PNG sequence with this fix, but couldn't get his rim light or shadow working. And so this Clay right here is not part of the composition. He is a completely separate PNG sequence above the actual shot in Premiere. Clay is not meant to overlap Rob when his hand lowers. Whoops. There were a lot of breaks in the rigs that we just never figured out a solution for. A big one was the shadows being baked into every rig. We wanted to go for a more colored pencil style with our backgrounds this time around, and so we thought it would be cool to give everyone a textured shadow in their rig, which was cool in the moment, but it caused a lot of headaches when they either wouldn't appear, would bleed into the teeth, would disappear mid-shot, or overlap the incorrect spot, like Angie's eyes or this moment which ended up in the final where Rob's teeth are brown. It's his shadow being on the wrong layer. Again, nightmare to work with, and this was just one thing to consider. There was also the fact that we didn't consider showing the rig artist what Clay's tufts of hair looked like under his collar. And so it came out wrong. Our fault. Because of this, we had to redraw the side of his head for every shot revision where we see him from a profile view. Then there was this weird breakage with Rob's muzzle line art. There was still a major lack of communication when it came to the outer line consistency. Again, we were just so go and made to believe this would be an easy fix at the end when, no. Next episode, we're considering toning down the line art considerably, because it's a lot of headache and I don't really feel like the show needs that thick a line art. Veronica did a majority of the revisions for the shots, especially during the later stages of production. Sometimes we would get no shots for a day and then like 15 would come in an hour. And any day those revisions were not given back was another day lost that the animator could have spent working, and so it was really important that they get their notes back ASAP. Some animators completely got the style and boards from their first shot, but others took slightly longer to figure out what we were going for. Some of that could be attributed to the first half of the cartoon having a different board artist with a different style, so it was a case of balancing their expressions and posing with something still on style of the cartoon. Some of it could also be attributed to returning animators doing things the same way it was for the first episode, despite the style changing ever so slightly. But ultimately, it was on us for not revising all the boards to be in the appropriate style from the get-go. After we received our first couple shots from the boards sent out, Veronica made sure to board each future scene on model to make sure it was how we wanted the final product to look. The final 2 scenes were boarded pretty exactly to how we wanted them to end up, and in return, those scenes were by far the easiest to work on with the animators. Not only because of the accuracy in the boards, but also because we got to repurpose the backgrounds, as mentioned earlier, which made posing and spacing so much easier. From there, I had to start compositing the entire cartoon, which at this point was coming out to being around 240 shots, which is like way too much. I had never composited before, aside from a few bits of cleanup on the pilot, and so this time around we wanted to seriously tone down the lighting compared to the first episode. The first looked great, but was definitely over-composited in a lot of areas. Just a lot of unnecessary work that took away from the actual animation. It wasn't until I started practicing After Effects more that I started to gain the confidence in wanting to composite every single shot with more than just basic color correction. It's not perfect, and I could learn to improve in a lot of places, especially when it comes to shadows. Some of them are just completely wrong, and I never noticed it until I'd already hit render, but I had a lot of fun doing it. It was super tedious having to go into Toon Boom and individually render out every single layer as a PNG sequence for almost every shot, but thankfully I got some help with it at the end by one of our animators, Andros. Once I got past that and the occasional annoying shot, it was actually rather relaxing at times, even though my knowledge of the program is very limited. I figured I'd showcase some of my After Effects files and do some tutorials on how I composited a few shots over on P. There was also the issue that for the early shots I would organize things in a really stupid way or make dumb mistakes I didn't know how to fix, and it wasn't until months later in production where I'd finally figure it out, but realize I either overwrote the save or set up the file in a way I do not know how to manage anymore. For the most part, the final cartoon went up without any glaring issues, at least not that the average viewer would notice. The biggest one I keep kicking myself about is this shot of Rob and Clay walking through the woods because the background is like jittering. And it wasn't until like an hour before uploading that I realized it's because the After Effects file was set to 60 FPS instead of 24. Again, so stupid, but I had since lost the After Effects file, so I said whatever. The only other one I wish I had the time to fix before updating was the opening, where it says 3 p.m. and only 3 p.m. It was meant to start like the pilot, 3 p.m. Friday, catching up. But because I was so afraid of accidentally rendering out an old version of a shot somewhere, I made every layer that wasn't the main one invisible, which meant the Friday text and catching up logo unknowingly went unrendered. Now, you may be saying, Mark, why didn't you just, render it again or take a day to fix all these minor things? And that's because another issue came up. See, we have this Kickstarter Discord server, and in there, I promised we would do a special screening of the episode 3 days before its actual release. We didn't show them a final cut as it was still about 20 shots from being done. It was a great time, really cool to see everyone's reaction live. But some little jokester only paid the money to join the Discord, so they could screen record and leak the episode early. I don't know why they'd give me $100 for this, but whatever. Someone notified me of it immediately and I pretty quickly got it taken down while it only had around 20 views. Still, annoying though. And so I turned to Veronica and said, should we just get it done for tomorrow? And so suddenly I was staying up all night trying to composite the final 20 shots, as well as any last minute fixes that needed taken care of. I'm kinda happy about it as it gave me the motivation to get it done a day early, but there was definitely 1% more polish I could have added with that extra day. Not a huge deal though, I'm sure most of you didn't notice these things, but I will never not watch this cartoon without seeing those. Again, the response so far couldn't be greater. I was expecting it to get 100k given my lack of any real promotion. I gotta get better about that. But right now, we've just passed 800k, which is insane. And Veronica and I are ready to start boarding episode 3 right away. I appreciate all you guys for sticking around. even if you didn't like the cartoon. I hope you check out the Patreon, as again, that is the only way more catching up will get made. We'll have a little goal on the page to show how far away we are from getting 1 episode made a year, and then 2, and then 3, and we'll go from there. Any amount is appreciated. And if you just care about my normal videos, then I'm so sorry for the break I've done since pretty much November. I have a mega 3-hour video coming very soon, I promise. I think 2026 will be a great year. Who knows if the Patreon does well? Maybe a year with another catching up episode. Maybe 2. Hope you'll stick around for the fun stuff, and with that, video's over. He's really dead, that's not a joke.